Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I appreciate you listening or watching. Uh, right now, it's Memorial Day, so I know this won't post for a few days, but just want to say thank you to, to you can't say I see people post that like, thank you for everybody who sacrificed. But I mean, the people that have given that ultimate sacrifice are no longer with us, but to the people that they left behind, if you're listening to this and you're into kayak fishing, thank you. Thank you for what you've sacrificed, your loved one, whether it's a parent, father, mother, whoever. So, grandfather, whoever it was, thank you. And thank you to all the service members, both past and present, and first responders. I definitely never say that, and haven't been in the military myself. I don't know why I don't. I plan to do that every show from here on out. I was thinking about that a lot today. So this week I had a great week. Just Memorial Day weekend. That's always hard to beat. Got to practice on Holt. We Iron City Kayak Anglers. We have a tournament coming up this weekend. Got to check that out, man. I'll tell you what. If you've never been to Bankhead or Holt, they're just separated by a dam here in Alabama. They are some of the most beautiful water in Alabama. Some of the best fishing. It's kind of like the Coosa River, still got, giant Alabama bass, largemouth. A lot of the fishing's really, really good. Because the cell service is so bad, it doesn't get big tournaments. But man, I could see if somebody did put on a tournament and you got to either go to Holt or Bankhead, Steve Owens or AJ or anybody else, service would suck. That would be the tough one. Now, a lot of it's kind of out in the ghetto, like not in the best, like it's not like the launches are bad, but it's not like an area where, like Kentucky Lake, where you're going to have a big city right on the water because it's a lot of it's camps and things like that. But if you could do the weigh in Tuscaloosa, it really would be like, you know, it really is a hidden gem here in Alabama and beautiful water. Really, every time I go there, it's like, man, why don't I come here more? Why don't I go camping here more? It's definitely one of the more, because we've got everywhere from Eufaula to Gunnersville to Pickwick, and they get hammered so much. And Holton Bankhead are really like not secrets, but for people out of state, man, I definitely put them on your list if you're coming to Alabama and looking for places to fish because it really doesn't get much better. But this week we have old pal and fin friend Matt Souders talking
What
about
up?
finesse jigs. What's up, dude?
Oh, living the life. I appreciate the beginning, talking about Memorial Day and everything like that. Um, as a
And thank
veteran,
you for your service, by the way.
oh yeah, no, I really appreciate it. But I actually had a conversation today at work. As a veteran myself, a lot of people come up and hey, thank you for your service on Memorial Day, which is fine. I'm not
Yeah, yeah,
degrading that at all. But we just got to remember this are for the ones who didn't make it.
that's right.
And that can happen, downrange or when we get back at home. So definitely, if you know someone, it's not something that ever goes away, and the festivities of the day will sometimes amplify it. So if you know somebody, reach out to them. Just hey, thanks for everything that you deal with on the after fact. So
And with veteran suicide, let's keep all those people that did make it back. You know, if there's somebody that and they went and served, check in on them every now and then because sometimes, obviously, the wounds of war aren't always superficial.
oh
So
yeah, I mean
check,
it's
check on those friends.
for sure. But yeah, man, I'm happy to be
Yeah,
on. Pumped. I think the last time you were on with the Z Pro show that I did on our show on
yeah,
Paddle and
yeah, yeah.
Fin.
Mhm.
So
That was
man,
a
I'm
great
pumped.
show, by the way.
Dude, it was awesome. I had so many people reach out. They're
Yeah,
like, dude, this show was so informative. I was like, he knows what he's talking about. So
yeah. I thought so too. Like even if you're not Z Pro, like you're not into buying Z Pro batteries, you want to buy a Dakota or whoever, who amped. It doesn't matter whoever. Just listening, go back and listening to Matt's show where it was like going in depth about batteries and the cell technology and everything. It's like everybody buying a lithium battery. All of us are
mhm.
spending all that money on these fine batteries that just knowing what you're buying, not, oh, this one has a great logo, or this warranty, what does this warranty really mean to me? Should I buy something off Amazon or whatever it is? Like you should at least have an informed decision. And that to me was, not to pump up Zipro, just battery knowledge. I thought it was awesome.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, this isn't like on the final cast we talk about products, right? And a lot of times we're
Mhm.
talking about baits and stuff. And you've listened to the show. We'll talk about
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
talk about the Trace. Okay, this is a
Mhm.
$15 bait. Not cheap bait, but also not like breaking the bank. A lithium ion battery that you're using for a motor example will run you between 800 and $1,200.
Yeah,
That's another boat. So
yeah,
I mean, if you're anything like us, being informed, especially when you're making large purchases, is awesome. And that show, like Dan said, whether you want to buy Z Pro, whether you want to buy Bioenno or Amped or
yeah.
Dakota, anybody, he knew so much. And I go back and I listen to that show multiple times just because there's something I miss, and I was there. And
Yeah.
but it was awesome.
Same.
It's super, super informative. That's one of my favorite shows that we've done. Just how
Yeah, me
informative it was.
too.
A little bit long, but you just hang on it because every minute there's something new coming across the pipe.
Yeah, dude, like went to, he's got a doctorate in lithium technology
Mm-hmm.
and learned under the guy who invented lithium batteries. Like, and he knows every plant in China,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, I mean, there is nobody that has, it would be hard to imagine that anybody from either the technology or the manufacturing side has that much rounded knowledge of the whole, lithium battery game. It was
Oh
very
yeah,
cool.
for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely
All
a
right, bro.
subject matter
So
expert. But
if people don't know, tell them who you are, man. If they don't listen to the show.
so my name is Matt Souders. I'm the co-host for the final cast on the Paddle and Fin Network. That's where I met Dan.
Yeah.
I've been doing that now. How long have I been doing that? A year and some change? Yeah, because it was
No,
right
longer than
after.
that, huh?
I don't think so. It was right after Dale Hollow 2022. Was it? Or
Okay.
2021? I don't know. I've been doing it for a while. But
Yeah.
but I'm located in the Dayton, Ohio area, and I fish for smallmouth and all our one great river because that's pretty much all we got. So
Yeah. Uh, Ohio, I'm sorry.
it's poo. It's
Yeah,
big poo.
why not like at least move to like Indiana? At least they've got like great clubs and it seems like better
Well,
water.
well everywhere. So I'll tell you everywhere unless you're north of Ohio, and me and my co-host Brad, we don't really count Lake Erie as Ohio just because it's not inland. Um, Ohio inland waters are poo poo. But I've got family here. As of right now, I work here, but I already told the second a Florida store opens, I'll miss smallmouth, but I'll just make trips and I'm going down south because
That's right.
yeah. Yeah. I was in North Carolina when I was in the Marine Corps and I wanted to stay there. And my wife was like, we should go home for family. And I made the mistake of listening to her. And now we're in Ohio and it sucks.
Yeah, yeah. It is what it is, man. The All right, so tonight we're talking about finesse jigs. Let's start with the actual jig. Like, what finesse jigs do you throw and why do you throw them?
So my number one finesse jig, I was almost sure I had one down here. I thought I put it here, but I don't, unfortunately. But it's the Jig Masters finesse jig. The big reason why I like that, and some people don't categorize it as a finesse jig, and here's where they're wrong. So a little bit, we're used to finesse jigs being like the Bitsy Bug, super tiny finesse jig, real short shanked hook. But the Jig Masters finesse jig is a little bit longer shanked, EWG hook, so you can rock it weedless, which when you're throwing finesse and they're really a lot of times they're pinned up on cover, I can throw that weedless not Texas rig, but weedless, throw it up in there and fish super nasty stuff. Um, the head design on it is just the same as the sled head that Jigmaster makes, so it bounces off rocks and ricochets fantastic, especially when it's like hitting a log. It'll really follow that log all the way down and have a more natural drop. Um, and man, I just love that jig. I started throwing it last year and I couldn't put it down. I caught easily a couple hundred on it without even attempting it. Held up great.
Hey, man.
Yeah. So
Hmm. There you go.
yeah. So
I'm. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was about to say I'll throw that, and then I'll throw the tried and true Bitsy bug for 2 reasons. One, they're super small, even if that Jig Masters jig doesn't, it's a little bit bigger profile. They don't want to hit that, so I'll throw something really small. And they're incredibly cheap. I mean, you can go to Walmart and get these for 99 cents half the time. So I'm not afraid to throw this in rock piles or, up in timber, because if I lose it, I probably spent $20 and I have 19 left that I can use. So,
In fact, fishing a river, you're going to lose a lot more, right?
oh yeah. I mean, it's if I go out, if I don't lose a bait and find a bait the same day that I go out, I'm surprised. Like Sunday I went out, I lost what did I lose? I lost something that ticked me off. What was it? Oh, it was a S crank, Megabass S crank, super ticked off. And then about 20 minutes later, I found a S waver underneath a log, which I
It's an
mean,
upgrade.
I mean, it's a 1 for 1 because both baits are like
Yeah.
$24, and I was like, all
Oh,
right, so I
are
cleaned
they
it up, looks
24?
great. Yeah, yeah,
God,
it was the
dog.
small S waver. It wasn't like the real big one. The real
Oh,
big ones
okay.
go for like 60.
Yeah.
But yeah, a little bit smaller. It's the one that I would assume to see in the river, something like this size. Not like ginormous, but big enough.
I didn't know the Megabass cranks were 25.
They ain't cheap, man. S wave or S cranks. You can sometimes find them. Like Bass Pro will run a sale on them occasionally to where they'll go for like 18, 17.99, 18.99. But regular price is $23.99, $24.99, depending on what color it is. And then once you start getting to discontinued colors, I've got a box of discontinued colors that I don't throw anymore because if I were to replace it, it's $120. So
Some of that stuff really, like, I try not to. I'm trying not to go down a JDM rabbit hole. I know y'all just had a show on it because I love to talk about it too. If you want to talk about JDM, go back and listen to Brad and Matt's last show on Paddle and Fin. It was a great show. They talked about some crazy JDM stuff. Some of that stuff, like we were talking the other day, it was about the dice.
mm-hmm.
I have 3 packs of them. I don't want to throw it. I don't want to know. I don't want to like it because they're what, $4, $10 a pack, 4 in a pack, like $2.50 a piece. I don't want to like that. And then even if you want to spend $10 a pack, it's if you can even get them.
Yeah, that's the worst thing. Like, so I mean, Dan will know this. In the Paddle and Fin group chat, I'm the JDM Lord. That's my nickname because I love everything and anything JDM. And the bad thing is you'll fall in love with a bait, and I have to either order it from Hookup Tackle, JDM Portal, or eBay. So there's a chance, even if I can find it, I'm waiting a couple days to a week plus just to get a bag of the bait, and you're paying way more. Like these razor shads, I think what do they go? Razor shads, they go for what, $4.99, $5.99 a pack,
Mm-hmm.
which it's Z-Man, they'll last forever. But I could get the same thing Japanese style that's not a Last Tech, and it'll be $9.99. It just, I mean, just is what it is for Japanese JDM plastics. So dude, it's a bad rabbit hole, and I'm still free falling down it, man. I've hit every branch of the way down, and I just keep going. So,
man, I really, some of that stuff I like. Like I bought a bunch of y'all were talked about these, the emo Kamushis. I got like 10 packs of them. I've been flipping that a bunch. I've done well. It's, it's hard too because, and again, right after this, I'm going to get back on track. I'm going to get out of that JDM. So I'm in the skid here. But like I don't know. I don't even know what I was saying, man. I don't want to spend all that money. The emo Kamushi, same way, 4 for $10. Hey, they work. That bait flat out works. But you can get the Tamakanuki, isn't it Yamakanuki? You can get the scat. Yeah, I mean, it's all the same profile. Do those little things make a difference? I don't know.
we want it to because it costs $10 a pack.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I will say, the thing I don't really like about that bait is I think the hookup ratio isn't as good.
No,
Like you
I can
might
see
get
it.
a couple more bites, but because of the bulk, even with an EWG, Like I've been throwing them on a ring DWG. I'm stuck on those ring hooks, but it just it's so fat. Like it's kind of like a big swim bait, the Mega Bass or Zal Dangerous, either one. It's like the hookup ratio isn't quite as good because it seems like you have all that plastic. And I would rather
Yeah.
throw something, not because I think I could just about get the same bites, and maybe that's in my head. Maybe it's the same amount of bites on something else that I'm going to have a better hookup ratio. It's not always about all the bites you get, it's about how many come in the boat. And if I can save a few bucks, that's even better.
I mean, I definitely don't blame you. Little tip for all your viewers out
Oh,
there who are throwing big
oh,
old chunky scats and stuff. Light wire EWG hooks. They fly right through that plastic.
mm.
That there's enough plastic in those baits to where you're not too worried about them tearing up, and your hookup ratio will go through the roof. A little bit, do one size smaller, light wire. You're good to go.
Yeah, I've been throwing them with the HD ones, so
Mm-hmm.
the VMC ringed HD hooks. Yeah. All right, I'll stop now. Okay, so I'll say because I love finesse jigs too. The ones I throw, I'm on the. I'm pretty OCD about my colors. I love a jig that I can get it across the line, and I throw all my jigs are all dirty jigs. I use
Mm-hmm.
the Luke Clawson, the round one finesse jig, and I used the Scott Canterbury finesse flipping jig, and then I used the finesse football jigs. I've went to because it also cut down on my soft plastics. I can use same trailer for all of them. I went to just finesse jigs because in a kayak, I think I don't feel like I'm losing any bites on a little bit smaller jig, and because we move slower, I went to finesse jigs not only to be able to save on soft plastics, not having to have two different sizes, but I just, I think it's the right strategy in my head, at least. And not say a big football jig or a big flipping jig or whatever else that they can't get done. And maybe sometimes they would get a bigger bite. Like if I lived in Texas, where we get so much pressure here, but if I lived in a place like Florida or Texas, maybe I probably would throw a bigger jig, but anywhere else in the country, maybe California too, but I think anywhere else in the country, especially places that get a lot of pressure like Alabama and Ohio, a finesse jig is probably the right way to go.
Oh, for sure. No, I 100% agree. The only reason I would throw anything bigger if I needed to get through the water column super fast, so I need something heavy to get down 30 feet, which there's a couple spots. There's a couple little reservoirs where I'll bust out the half ounce and the ounce jigs just because I'm fishing 45, 50 foot of water. I fished in Texas. I wouldn't bring anything less than a half ounce, and that's
Yeah.
the lightest I would go. And then Florida, I have a Florida box that are full of jigs, and they're all ouncers, every single one of them. And it's mostly because you're flipping into such matted stuff that you need the weight just to push through. And the little bit bigger profile. I mean, Florida fish. I haven't fished in Alabama, so I can't attest. But Florida fish teams, they just seem to be so much. Yeah, well, there you go. They seem to be so much more aggressive in Florida to where you can get away with throwing something a little bit bigger, and you'll get a couple short fish or small fish, but the big ones see that big bait and they're like, "That's worth my time," and then they just
Yeah,
hammer it. So,
yeah, for sure. So, all right. So, what kind of crazy Japanese trailers are you using on his baits?
dude, I'm about to blow your mind. You know what baits I used in the back of my mind? I used the Guggen rattle and chunk on the back of my bait, and this is the thought process. And especially if anybody's listened to my show, I talk some major trash to Guggen stuff. It just is what it is, and that's my own personal opinion. But that bait, I should have some extra ones down here. If I don't, of course I don't. I don't have anything down here. I need to restock. My wife's gonna
I
love
didn't
that.
know that thing spun. You have your whole
Oh,
damn tackle
oh,
store there, dude.
yeah, man. So I worked at when
That's
Gander
legit.
Outdoors still sold fishing stuff when they got out of it. I was like, "Hey, I'm taking this home," and they're like, "Okay." But yeah, it spins, and I got baits all around and all my line and stuff up top. Brad says he comes to the basement. He's like, "You have like a tackle shop," and I was like, "Dude, I have a lot of stuff that I don't even know I have." So yeah, but no, I use the Guggen rattle and chunk, and the big reason why. So before that, I was using the small sweet beavers from Reaction Innovation. And then I was using the shrimp bait from Megabass because the profile was nice and small, it was cylindrical, and it had a ton of appendages. And I was getting bites. Obviously, it's a jig. I'm still going to get bites when I'm throwing it in, but I wasn't getting. I use the jig kind of on the river, especially as a search bait. A lot of people use crankbaits, swim baits, and I use those too, but I use the jig as a search bait. I kind of fan cast and set up and see where they're kind of posting up. Sometimes they'll be 20 feet off the bank on a rock or, so I put on the Guggen Rattle and Chunk. My wife had bought me some just as a surprise gift. And I was like, oh, I'll try it, and I threw it out there and immediately my bites went up. And the only thing I can attest to it, because it's a little bit bulkier plastic, the only thing I can attest to it is that rattle, just a little bit extra attraction, getting them to come in. My bites went up. It works out great. The only negative is that bait is like a old school Senko. It is a 2-fish bait at best. So I run through them quick. So, but yeah, man, no JDM lures or trailers for me right anymore. It's all good old Guggens.
Because I was trying to throw them on a free rig, and
Mhm.
I was going to try use them for a jig trailer, try that out too. But it's another one of them baits. Like I've thrown it a couple times, but I'm so scared the fish are going to like it, and it's going to get in my head that this is a bait I have to have, and then it's just going to be so expensive.
Yeah, and I mean, we already kind of hit it. OSP is one of those bait companies, JDM companies out there that have a ton of different plastics that would fit anything.
Yeah.
The only reason, so it's an oxymoron or kind of backwards. So a lot of JDM plastics are, unless you're getting the cover scatter, the turd, or you're getting, a big thick bait, a lot of those baits are really not finicky. What's the word I'm thinking? I don't want to say fragile, but I want to say fragile. They tear apart real easy. They're not a multi-fish bait. And I wanted to get away from that. Now, the bait I fell in love with and used, that Guggen, is the same way. It's a 2-fish bait and it's done. But everything else, like Z-Man makes a ton of great trailers. So does Nico. And I really wanted to use the Nico crawls because they look so good on the back of a bait. But I found a lot of guys love using Z-Man stuff as trailers. I can't get it. I can't get them to stay on the hook or get on the hook without, um, the Jig Masters has a wire keeper, which is awesome because it really holds that bait up. I'm never worried about the bait actually tearing off. I'm just worried about it tearing where the hook is. But these Elastec baits and some JDM baits are so thick in the head that when they go over that, especially the non-elastics, it rips real bad.
Mm.
Um, and it's because they're designed. A lot of them are designed for Texas rigs or flipping. A lot of the plastics we use as trailers, especially in the finesse game, because just in the last 2 years is when you really start seeing the baby versions of all these baits we've been using. They just, I mean, they make these molds so thick and they make them for everything else. Now they're saying they're jig trailers when they're really still not. They're made for Texas rigs. They've got thick nose plastic pores, and you just gotta kind of find the bait that works for you. I know guys who use baby D bombs; they work great. It just depends on what you're throwing and what the fish like. And our fish eat a lot of crawl, so they're about it.
I've used Baby D Bomb before. That's a really good trailer as well. Probably the biggest fish I ever caught on Lay Lake was a football jig with a regular D Bomb trailer, kind of trimmed up. But that was D Bombs, Baby D Bombs are great baits.
Oh yeah.
Me, everybody knows I'm on the Egg Zone train. I've been throwing MB Fat Finesse Craw, the MB Finesse Craw. It's muscle back finesse craw for at least a couple years now. The colors and all that, it works for me. The crawls float. I like it. Yeah. So all right. So when are you going to like the finesse jigs? When are you going to use that? I think this is a thing that a lot of people try to figure out. Now I know I've personally watched tons of videos on it. When are you throwing finesse jig over a Texas rig or something else? Like when is finesse jig time? Whenever you see a certain situation or lineup, ooh, that's finesse jig. When is that for you?
So for me, I learned all my jig techniques and everything from the Grandmaster of Jigs, Gerald Swindle himself.
Okay.
And he's a guy who has said in the past, he always and forever, no matter what conditions are, what time of the year, he always and forever has a jig tied on. So I throw the finesse jig year round. Now I'll throw it in December, I'll throw it in July, it all doesn't matter. But when I'm going down the river, going on a lake, I'm not a huge Texas rig guy. I was for the longest time, but I got to the point to where Texas rigs, especially a Texas rig Senko, you could give that to somebody who's never fished, cast it out there, and they're going to end up catching a fish. And I got to the point to where I was like, man, I just want to catch them on something different. Same reason why I hate throwing the Ned rig now, because I can go out and catch fish on the Ned rig all day, but it's gotten boring. So if I can throw a Texas rig somewhere, I can probably throw a jig there, especially with the Jig Masters jig. It's weedless. So I don't have to worry about, like, if I want to throw it in heavy grass, great. If I want to throw it in cover, great. Um, so anywhere that you in your mind that you would say, I'm throwing a Texas rig Senko there or something, I'm throwing a jig at the same spot. And when I'm going down the river, I could be throwing top water. If I know they're busting or whatever early in the morning, I'm throwing top water. If I see any type of laydowns, a large boulder sticking out, especially right before a riffle or right after a riffle, a large rock sticking out of the water, that goes down no matter how good the bite is on it. And the jig comes out and I start just doing little flips right to it. I'm not really doing a searching or casting. I'm going right in that cover. 9 times out of 10, there's always a fish. Doesn't have to be a big one, but there's always a fish on large rocks, especially in our rivers, large rocks or debris in the water. Something's holding to it as long as the water has a decent depth and the current slows down behind it. So when I see those, dude, I know it's jig time. I'm throwing it. Um, Best example, there's a stretch of our river that has obviously it could change by now. This was last year, but it had some riffles. There was a rock bar. It thinned out and there's a big log across it and then riffles right after it. And in between the two riffles, it slowed down a little bit. So while I was zipping through the riffles, I cut right over to the rock bar. I was with Brad and another buddy, and they're like, "Why are you stopping?" I was like, "Because there's a log under the water that I can see in between two riffles. There's fish there." So they went by, and I just threw that jig, got it right on top of the log, and let it fall right off. I caught 4 smallmouth back to back to back, sitting there,
Hmm.
ranging from 10 inches all the way up to an 18 was the biggest that I caught at that one spot, and they were all sitting there. Another example, I picked between me and Brad, we may have picked 15 fish off the same little debris pile with jigs. Just, I mean, they sit there. So when I see debris, logs in the water, it's jig time.
Gotcha. For me, it's kind of obviously football jig is going to be, to me, it's more winter slash summer
Mm-hmm.
here. And, like if I'm going North Alabama, I'm going to fish ledges or anything like that, football jigs. And then again, in the winter, whenever I want slow on bottom presentation, the Scott Canterbury flipping jig, that one's for grass, and that's why I use the Luke Clawson. That one would be for rocks, and the Scott Canterbury would be for grass. And I really only throw that more pre-spawn, and then I'll go to Texas rig after the spawn, and except for the finesse jig, the regular ball finesse jig. I'm same way. I mean, I live in Alabama. If you're There's so many times where you just have to junk fish. You're just throwing a little bit of everything, and a ball jig is just it's a 4x4. It does everything. It goes everywhere. You can do a little bit of everything with it. It skips really well. You pitch it really well. It's great for anything, especially rocky. Like if I'm going to Gunnersville, I'm not going, I'm going to throw a Texas rig because of all the grass. Unless I know I'm specifically fishing like a bridge, or like that's part of the day is going to be a bridge, then rocks, things like that. I would bring a finesse jig. But if I'm going to like Logan Martin or somewhere else where it's just a rocky lake, let's just say that more of a rocky lake, not grass. A finesse jig's going to be just one I have in the boat because I'm so confident with it. I've been throwing it for so long, and I start out like it's been like years of being on this where I've went through a bunch of them. I think a lot of people start out at the who is it? The heavy finesse jig where you get like two in a pack.
VMC has a. Well, no, it's not VMC. It's a. Oh Lord, is it Strike King?
Why am I thinking? No, it's like I don't know. It's the heavy finesse. Whoever throws it, it's not Buckeye. God, that's going to kill me.
Just about to say,
All
I'm looking
right.
it up too. It's gonna annoy me.
Yeah, I know. I gotta look it up. I know it's called heavy finesse jig.
The War Eagle.
War Eagle. I was
Yeah,
going to
heavy
say I was
finesse.
thinking Falcon, War Eagle. Yeah, the War Eagle one. That one's okay. I threw that a lot whenever I was fishing for Montebello in college. By the
Mm-hmm.
way, now three-peating on the national championships. Champions right now, three-time national champions in a row.
There you
Um,
go.
yeah, they're the best college team in the country, of which I was president a few years ago. Um, But yeah, I started out with that one. The hookup ratio wasn't that good. And eventually, I've used the G Man balling out. That one's really good. And eventually I made my way to the dirty jigs. I like it because the price, they're available. The price isn't too bad. The colors I can use over different. So it's more of a jig system for me, is
Mm-hmm.
why I like them. I think they're probably equal to some other ones out there. I mean, I'm not on any kind of dirty jigs team or anything, but yeah, they just they've worked well for me. But I think like the G Man balling out and some other ones are probably equally as good. It's a jig. Some are a little bit better than others, but they're all pretty close. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it really gets down to kind of like the every jig, in my opinion. It's really hard to say one jig is so much better unless it's like vastly different because 90% of the jigs look just like a bitsy bug. It's got that almost the straight shank to hook, and it's got the weed guard, and your head design might be different, but um for the longest time before I went to the Jig Masters jig, I was using the Kayak ball jigs
okay.
and the tungsten ones because they were so small and you felt everything on the bottom. But it's kind of like what you said. Like I have to look at those dirty jigs because you're not the first person to talk about them. But the Kayak ones were so expensive because it's tungsten.
Yeah.
They were like $11 a jig, and they were nice because they were so compact, so small. But sometimes I think that can be you can I'm one of the first people I've ever heard say this, but you can go too small on baits. It's never a bad thing to size up. Like when I'm having issues getting bites, I will size up the trailer to make a bigger presentation. Um, and that's why I like the Jig Masters is because it's a quarter ounce. That's the only weight he has is quarter ounce. It does no smaller,
Uh,
and it's about that long, and it works great in finesse situations, and it works great when hey you need to size up, take the 3 inch or the 2.5 inch bait off and throw a 4.5 inch bait on there, and it's still weedless, but it's much bigger and chunkier. Um, yeah, I mean, but dude, ball jigs, you're not wrong. A ball jig's a ball jig. It will always work, and there's just money.
yeah. I mean, unless you're throwing it in just like thick grass, everywhere else is going to work. Yeah, it's just like, the most general bait there is, like, can do anywhere, go anywhere. You can swim it a little bit if you need to. It can do a little bit of everything, just all around great bait. And one of those baits, like if I were telling somebody, well, here's the first five baits you need to learn as an angler, a ball jig would definitely be one of them because it gets bit everywhere. It's just great bait. All
Oh yeah.
right, so setup, rod reel line. Give me your crazy JDM weird stuff that you're throwing.
All right.
Japanese market only. Gold
Yeah,
line.
yeah. Well, it's not Japanese market only. The real kind of is, but it's starting to come over the U.S. So the rod, I have a Megabass Orochi Double X braillist, which
Oh,
is
all right.
that's my jig rod as of now. That it kind of floats between that and then the Douglas X Matrix. Um, but it's a 7.2 medium heavy, fast tip. And then line wise, it runs. I usually for all my finesse jigs, I always run 12-pound Sunline. Uh, all the time. FC Sniper. I'll sometimes throw Assassin in there, but It's very rare just because I can't find assassin anywhere in stores anymore, and it's very pricey. So I run 12-pound FC cart or FC sniper, and that goes to everyone out there who knows me. It hurts them a little bit, but it goes to a Daiwa Zillion as of right now because I'm not throwing it. I had it on a Bantam. I bought a Zillion, and that thing casts just
One
as
of the
well as
new
my Bantam. Yeah.
one of the New Zillions.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
The SVTWG 100 SH or 100H, excuse me. But I have it running to that, and man, that thing just launches a 1/4 ounce jig. The rod's not set up for it, does it great, mostly because that reel can throw super light without really carrying. And man, it's awesome. I feel everything, but I still have all the backbone I need, so works out.
Yeah, I'm actually using the same reel. I bought a couple of Zillions this year, and like you said, they're amazing. So I have a Zillion, and this is my highest dollar setup. I mean, my stuff isn't this nice. A Zillion to Falcon Kara 7.2 medium heavy, same as you, fast tip. I use
Mm-hmm.
15-pound line rather than 12. Seaguar Invis X 12, 15, both are good. 15, sometimes I'll also use it for the Canterbury jig with some grass. And I think maybe that's why I do 15 and not 12, because sometimes I am throwing it around grass. I use that same setup for finesse jigs. So that's like my finesse jig setup. So,
Yeah.
but also the finesse football jig too. I use it on all three. So.
Yeah, I ran FC Sniper 14-pound for the longest time, and some parts of our river, most of the time, the Great Miami looks like poo because it just does. We're in a valley here, so we get a ton of rain, and the river's either blown out or it looks like green baby vomit for weeks on end after. But there's sometimes when it gets super clear, and when I was running 14-pound, I would notice fish noticing my line, which I was never a huge believer in it. I was like, fish are gonna bite it anyway. But I sized line down to 12, and I got more. My bites went up, and it's mostly I'm not the believer that they can see the line, but I do feel they can feel it because fish, just like sharks that you see on Shark Week when they talk about all the receptors in their nose, it's the same concept. Fish have a lateral line, especially bass. That lateral line picks up any movements in the water, things like that, and they can feel when there's a thicker line in the water. It can sometimes push them off. So when I went to 12-pound FC Sniper, I've never had a line break on me ever, and I've done some stupid stuff with it, like cast it in 47 trees on the same trip and still not change my line out. And but yeah, I've never had the line snap at 12-pound, and I act stupid with hook sets sometimes because I become a little schoolgirl when I feel it nibbling, and I just stand. A couple of weeks ago, right when we were at Dale Hollow, I threw it out and I felt the fish biting on it. I stood up in my kayak. I didn't need to, stood up and reeled down and literally did a bass boat hook set, man. And it held up fine. I mean, but the fish didn't like it because it was only 14 inches and it went skiing. But I mean, that's how I usually am. And I haven't had one break on me yet. So I'm loving the 12-pound, and I've actually sized down everything except for swim baits. That's still big old 25-pound fluoro. So,
Yeah. All right. So what kind of retrieves are you using? Or is there anything you could tell people about, certain the way you're holding your mouth, the way you certain amount of, pops or anything special you do?
certain gyrations. Um,
Yeah, little
so
body roll in there.
yeah, yeah. So I can tell a lot of times, especially if you have a higher quality rod, putting how I always do it when I cast it out. So I retrieve with my right hand. I'm one of those weirdos who use a right-handed bait caster and a
Mm.
left-handed spinning rod. Um, but when I cast it out, for everyone watching, I basically make like a pistol gun, like when you were kids and you were shooting at people, and I curl my finger up underneath it and I put my index right on the rod so I can feel anything. And then when I'm moving it, it's either a real gentle, I count to 4. So I do 1, 2, 3, 4 as I'm pulling up, and then I reel back down and I let it sit. It depends. And I mean, that's if I don't know how they're biting. I don't know how aggressive they're being. And I'll do that. And I'll just keep working that back to the boat. 1, 2, 3, 4, reel up. 1, 2, 3, 4, reel up. If I'm not getting anything on that, it's throwing it out. And I kind of just I jig it. Just literally what typical jigging technique is, where you're bouncing the rod tip and the jig's kind of scooting along the bottom. And then I'll incorporate some pops. So it's coming off the bottom. I'm just trying to see what the fish is really getting enticed on. And there's be times where they're not biting the slow retrieve, they're not biting the jigging, but they're biting the pop. So then when I throw it out, it's pop, pop, and I just pop it all the way back to me. Just big old hops. The fish, 9 times out of 10, no matter what technique you're throwing, the fish will always dictate how you present that bait. So sometimes with Texas rigs, you can throw it out there, or jigs, especially football jigs in the winter. You just drop it down and you just drag it. All you're doing is dragging that bait right across the bottom, and you keep doing that to get the fish to come down and look at it. But if they don't want that, you got to change it up and make the fish want to eat that bait. So it kind of depends. Personal favorite, I love doing the count to 4, bring it up to the top, because you feel the bottom a little bit more. So if the jig bite doesn't pan out, you know what the bottom's like, and you can kind of base your other decisions off that.
Gotcha. The only two things I'll say are on top of that are, for me, like same way a football jig. Whenever I come something where it's kind of hung up, where it's like you feel like you've come up to something, give it a second and then pop it. Sometimes the fish, like you're saying, pop it. Sometimes the fish, they're just sitting there. Whenever it comes to a spot like that, they're sitting there looking at it. And whenever that's how I have to think about it. Like I know it's on something, and I need to come up over it. If I'm sitting there, and I'll hold it, and then I'll just pop it. And I think sometimes it creates that reaction strike. And two, like, you don't always have to throw a wobble head. Like, you can straight retrieve a ball jig too, especially if the water is pretty shallow. Like, you can give it a little bit of movement where it's kind of coming across the bottom. And that's just different ways to do it. I've had some success doing those. So yeah, that's it on top of it.
Yeah. And popping off cover, I've had a fish, kind of another situation. There was a tree that was in the water, and there was one big old thick branch or something that was popping off it. I threw it on the other side of that. And whenever I do that, I'll try to throw it on the other side of stuff so I can walk. I call it walking the jig, and I walk it up that tree branch. And I've seen a fish come up to it. As for people who aren't watching this, you're going to not know what I'm talking about, but I'm going to explain it best I can. I pulled it up the tree branch just where it sat on top in real shallow water. I mean, it's less than an inch, and I could see a smallmouth come behind it and look at it. And then I just, not necessarily pop it, but drag it right over the end of the thing. And right when it fell, that smallmouth dove right after it. So it's a reaction bite. There a lot of times in what's that YouTube video or YouTube people, Matt Allen,
Tactical bassing.
Tactical Bassin. They have so many cool. I hate that show mostly because of what he says at the beginning, but they have a ton of
Matt
great.
Allen.
Oh, dude,
Tactical bassing.
it's so
He's always
annoying,
got his hand
man.
out like this, like so
I
he
know, it's
always has his
so
hand up here.
annoying. Oh, it
Yeah,
bugs me to
sorry.
death. But they have so many great underwater videos of fish looking at all types of different baits. And they
Yeah.
had a jig video where the fish would stare at it and he was dragging it, and they would just scoot along with it. And the second he popped it, hammered it, just immediately hammered it. So a lot of times they'll look at those baits to kind of see, hey, A, what is this in my area? And B, can I eat it? With largemouth and smallmouth bass, the answer to can I eat it is always yes. But you just have to give it a little bit of action to either threaten the fish or take the fish off, especially when spawning, like you're talking about throwing a jig for pre-spawn. Man, you're with jigging, it's pre-spawning, you're finding the fish and you're just ticking them off. That's all you're doing, especially when they're on beds. You tick them off, you piss them off, you make them want to eat it just because they're mad at you. And it's just getting those reaction strikes like you explained. I mean, and those are some of the best bites you can get, because at one point you're popping it and the next second something like a freight train hit the back end of it.
That's right. Sorry, can't get something in my eye.
I was about to say, it looks like you're crying.
Yeah, sorry. Finesse jigs. Um, I guess the last thing is talk about colors. Are there any like what are your go-tos? Or you like the Gerald Swindle black brown, black and blue or brown and then brown green pumpkin. And if you get crazy, I like you said this on Bash, he was like, and sometimes if I get real crazy, I swap them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that exact seminar was one of the ones that really, I was the guy, just like everyone else. Once you really dive into the tackle game, you want to get one of every color. I've got the
Mm.
same spinner bait because I like the Jig Master spinner baits too. I've got 12 of those in all different colors, but they're all half ounce. But when it comes to jigs, it's black and blue again, and then I will occasionally throw a green pumpkin brown. That's it. I don't throw any other colors, any other variations. I don't care if the newest bluegill color ever came out. I'm not going to throw it. I'm going to throw black and blue and green and brown. And that's just like, what he said. Sometimes when I get crazy, man, I'll just swap them. And the only difference between me and Master Swindle is I will switch up trailers. So if I have a black and blue with a black and blue crawl and it's not doing anything, I will put a green pumpkin crawl on the black and blue trailer just to give it a little breakup. And that's worked for me in the past, just to kind of confuse the fish, I guess, more than anything, and to say I'm trying something different while I'm throwing the same technique. So
I totally agree with that. Like I would rather change a trailer on a jig and give it a little bit more action or shorten it up or make it bigger more than I care about color. I mean, I'm same. I throw three different shades. It's like black, blue, some kind of green pumpkin blue, and then a lighter like in X Zone it's called 309. I throw at pretty much everything. It's just more of a translucent color.
mm-hmm.
So I mean, there's three different shades. I'm doing them based on watercolor. I don't really care. I just want something dark, medium, and more translucent. That's it. And then the colors don't every now and then I think they kind of get keyed into certain colors or something, so like they need a certain tone for it to seem natural to them, but most of the time it's save your money. Don't be buying a bunch of colors
Well,
or
that's
bringing in
that's the
all the
biggest
plastics with you. Yeah.
that's the biggest thing, man. I was, and I tell people from experience, I've got bags and bags of different colors of the same bait, and I don't use half of them anymore. Like
Yeah.
black, no matter, all my plastics are black and blue and green pumpkin now, and black,
Mhm.
pure black. That's my favorite color, period. And but you really don't need to go out and spend extra money to get, a red trailer unless you're throwing a fire crawl. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think where you live. If there's something specific like Tennessee River in the summer, like plum, peanut butter jelly, whatever it is, like there's like certain Keating colors certain times a year on certain bodies of water. If you've got that going on, throw that obviously, but most of the time it don't matter. It just, June bug in Florida or, whatever. Well, whatever you're into.
Yeah,
Well, that's it, man. I feel like we covered it, right?
I can't think of anything else really that we haven't covered other than, no, that's really it.
If you have any questions, shoot Matt a message. He'll answer you.
Oh
He's a
yeah,
nice
for
guy
sure.
most of the time.
Well,
Yeah,
most of the time.
yeah, yeah. Nobody's perfect. I'm not a nice guy most of the time. So, all right. So where can everybody find you, man?
So I'm on Instagram, Matt Souders Fishing, as well as Facebook. Let's see. Other than that, Paddle and Fin on every major podcast network out there, and we do the Final Cast, which is a product review show that we're kind of branching out and doing some other stuff now. But yeah, come by, say hi. Any questions you have, especially finesse jigs, I love doing it. But any questions you have, period, about anything, let me know. I've probably spent money and used whatever product you're wanting to buy.
Yeah, me too.
Like, I mean, I've got reels that haven't been touched and 12 rods sitting there that I don't use anymore. So I've used a lot of stuff. So if you have questions, reach out to me, man. I probably have an understanding of it.
Any sponsors you want to shout out?
So I'm on Team Bonafide. Shout out Team Bonafide. I love their boats. Freaking awesome. Especially the RVR. It's made me fall in love with rivers again. Bonafide, Douglas rods, and Yak Gadget. Yak Gadget is, if you want to kit your boat out, that's what you use, because he's got everything imaginable to put it. Yep. Yeah.
There you go. Cool. Well, man, we appreciate y'all watching. I appreciate you listening. Matt, thank you for being on. And, take a minute, even if it's past Memorial Day, take a minute to think about those people. So we appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Take it easy.
Peace.